So I almost didn't do this panel. I'm gonna talk about A Fine Dessert. I want it to be clear that this is my personal attack. I'm a big fan of your work, especially now that I've seen the Subway piece, which I've been admiring for years. I love it. And I believe, especially now having met you, but I certainly believe, and I always have from your comments, that you came from a very genuine place writing this book, drawing the pictures for this book. That was never in doubt for me. And yes, and I tell my students that we have to try knowing that we're going to fail, and I believe in that. And as writers and artists, our intentions become irrelevant once we put our work out into the world. And a book is a creation of a village, just like people are. And so it's really about the whole community of Kidlit that needs to be having this conversation, and is having this conversation, that we need to address. I don't think it's just about your drawings as much as it is about your drawings. It's also about how they're received, and who decided to publish them, and all these different ways that we talk about them. My reaction to the book was visceral and painful. Slavery is an open wound in America because we have been lying to ourselves about it forever, and we continue to today. And I think you really didn't want to continue that lie, and I think the book does. And you've asked people to read the full book and look at the context of it, and I know that you put in the serious faces at the last panel of that sequence. With the idea of bringing some of the drama of slavery to light and the tragedy of it. For me, that didn't do it at all. I think when we show enslaved children doing slave work with a smile, it takes a lot more than a frown later on to really contextualize it properly. For me, the context of this book is the wildly undiverse children's book publishing world. It's the ongoing cycle of violence against children of color that is committed by the state. It is that the Confederate flag still flies until there's a massacre to bring it down. It is that we are still fighting the Civil War in many, many ways, and we're still dealing with the fallout of slavery in many ways. People of color don't have the luxury of being able to sugarcoat history to our children. And when we do, people die. And that's one of the really important pieces about this, that we are traumatized, and it is an ongoing state of emergency for people of color in America today. And children's books need to speak to that without trying to provide umbrellas or make it sound like everything's okay, because it's not. The role of literature is to tell us the difficult truths, which again I believe you tried to do, but to arm us for the world in all of its ugliness. And that's not an easy thing to do in a children's book. And I think that there's a lot of honesty in the end when the writer says that they know that you guys knew that you were going to bring up an issue that you couldn't fully take in the whole birth of. And from my point of view, where I stand, if you can't, then you shouldn't touch it. That's how I feel about slavery. That's how I feel about sexual assault. There's some things that we can't sugarcoat. So I want to say that because I think that we're all trying to figure out how to do diversity right, and that's going to always come with times when we do it wrong. I don't think anyone should be patting themselves on the back for starting this conversation. I don't think you are. I don't think anyone should be, because I think it's a very unhealthy conversation for us to be having right now in America. I think we should be past it. I don't think we should be wondering whether or not it's okay to make it look like slavery may or may not have been not that bad. I think on a diversity panel we should be talking about strategies for moving forward and for getting free, but we're not. So that's why I almost didn't come. I'm glad I came. I'm glad that we've met and we get to have this conversation. And I hope we get to continue the conversation, but I also don't, because I don't think it's a great conversation. I think it's a really painful conversation, and I want us to move forward from it. So.